Welcome to the GigRoots podcast. GigRoots tells the story of the grassroots economy in America. I'm your host, Ethan Daly. During each episode, I interview the individuals who are working towards social and economic transformation at the grassroots level. Let's get into it. In this episode, I talked with Andre Walker of Miami, Florida. His latest enterprise is called Hydro Water. It's water fortified with minerals to help boost the immune system and improve overall health. Andre has been involved in many areas touching fitness, sports, and nutrition. His goal now is to improve lives by delivering simple, cost-effective ways to improve the produce and foods we eat every day. During a growing health crisis, Andre believes access to quality food and water is absolutely critical. I'm here with Andre Walker. Andre, how are you?
I'm great. How are you this morning?
Doing okay. You're down there in Florida, right? So the weather's treating you pretty nicely.
Yes, I'm in downtown Miami.
Yeah. So you're party central, historically speaking.
Yeah, but it looks like those days will be over for quite some time.
Well, it's interesting because the state that you're in is one of the states that started to loosen up restrictions on people going out into public spaces, and so I think we were discussing that just the other day when you and I were talking. But how has the landscape been for you down in Florida during this time of the pandemic?
It's been interesting because I'm in South Florida. So initially, like I think I told you, I got rerouted. I was heading actually back to New York City, and God brought me here. So initially, I began in pretty much in Fort Lauderdale, and it seemed like the restrictions were heavy in Miami, and they would just start creeping up north. And in the process, God pretty much moved me to downtown Miami. So it almost seems as if life is almost normal, except when you go outside, I see more people exercising, working out. But then you get the fear from people, or you can see it on them if you're walking in a grocery store, or if you're passing people outside on the street. And then you'll see groups of people together, whether it's children or families, outside spending time together. So you kind of get a mix of all of those things kind of when you venture outside every day.
Well, that's actually really fitting for the type of business that you're involved in. Can you talk about Hydro Water?
Yeah, hydro. What hydro is? Hydro. We call hydro. Well, the FDA calls hydro basically a supplement, but hydro is a pharmaceutical grade water that we take it through a 4-step filtration process where we begin to energize it with a group of essential trace minerals, alkaline minerals, nutrients, and electrolytes so that the body can run efficiently almost under any and all circumstances. So we got started, or I got started. I had met a gentleman who happened to be the physician at the Final Four in Atlanta, Georgia in 2015. And I was invited and got a ticket by a famous college basketball coach by the name of Mike Jarvis, who I had introduced him and his wife to some testing years ago that helped improve just their levels of their overall health with some blood testing. And because of that, Coach made one of my dreams come true. He gave me tickets to championship game, and I was in maybe the 20th row. And at the same time, God had intersected and brought this physician in my life who 2 or 3 months after the Final Four gave me a call and said, we volunteer. We work at Emory in Atlanta. We volunteer with one of the top football programs in the state of Georgia. And our biggest issue is dehydration, cramping, muscle-related injuries. We do 2-a-days in the heat, and we have 50 kids, and nothing we've been able to use over the last few years has been able to help our program. We have boosters that'll fund products if we need, because we're an inner city school. Do you have anything that can help? So I had the product shipped to the school. We sent about 1,000 bottles for training camp, and they said it was great. 3 months later, we began to ship them about 3,000 bottles a month. And the third month, I got a call from their clinical athletic trainer, and she said, "This is unbelievable. we haven't had a cramp in 3 months. You have to come to the school and meet the parents and coaches. And then by the end of the season, they went an entire season without having any cramping issues, any muscle related injuries, and no dehydration problems. So that was kind of the initial start of kind of me walking in this new journey in my life, which started about 5 years ago.
Prior to that, you were involved in the healthcare space. Is that right?
I was in the healthcare space, but I was in a different dynamic in the healthcare space. I had relocated down to Florida, and pretty much a miracle that I got a job as a medical sales rep / consultant. This was back in 2009, so we were 11 years ago, to where it was companies, or the company I had worked for at the time, we did blood work, and we could take a sample of someone's blood and pinpoint how they should and shouldn't eat for their bodies. And within, I want to say maybe my first month of training, I got a huge sale from a doctor who used to be a team doctor for the San Francisco 49ers. And it was a $10,000 sale. I got in training. And the first thing she told me, or the last thing before we got off the phone, she said, "I wish this was available when I was their team doctor." She said, "I would have tested everyone on our team." And before I hung that phone up, I heard that little voice that shot up in my head and said, "You need to take this outside of where you work." And that was the initial start of the journey of going, okay, if this physician says this, I'm working with physicians that work with seniors. They're looking for a better quality of life, and they need their body to work as efficiently as possible. It makes sense that the same thing would want to, the sports athletes would actually want the same thing. But let's say 11 years ago, it was interesting talking to athletes and coaches and strength and conditioning coaches in the major sports about health and nutrition and their diets. And they looked at me like I was from another planet back then. But it's weird because now it's commonplace now, but it wasn't, 10, 11 years ago. I guess depending on the athlete, but as a whole, it was a rough road. But I'm glad to see things have changed now, because it's kind of led me to what I'm doing now.
And of course, now things have, within the last year, especially within the last few months, things have changed dramatically with the spread of the coronavirus and dealing with this pandemic. I know for you, Andre, you've talked about your passion for public health. That's something that you've been involved in, like you said, for a long time. In your mind, how does this affect things, not only just with your business, with Hydro and how you're thinking about this, but what is your strategy, or what are you thinking about in terms of trying to promote public health during this time?
It's almost right place, right time. So, Ethan, like God will do things in your life, or God will have you do things, and you don't know, and essentially why you're doing them. You just know that you're supposed to do it. So when we started, let's just say I started 10 years ago with these type of exams, learning how to develop supplements, and eventually going into Hydro. When I started with Hydro, it was almost as if I had a plastic bottle of water, and I was trying to talk to people, and they were laughing, going, you have magic water now. And people didn't want to listen to me, but it was a few that I'm happy that I'm so happy that, even though I was crazy, they thought I was crazy. Like I love Mike Jarvis to death, and he's one of the top coaches of all time. And he says, when I walked into his office, he for some reason, he didn't know why. He just told me yes. He says he's happy now he did, but back then he thought I was crazy as well. But it seems as if I'm now in right place, right time, just because I followed the direction of the Lord, 5 or 6 years ago. When I initially started in, let's just say, hydration, and I wanted to pitch and sit down with investors and people in New York City, when I would mention hydration and importance of hydration, they would look at me as almost as if it was weird, like it didn't make any sense. I would come back down to the South, and the South would understand it a little differently, just because of the sports and football and baseball. And I've known for years, because of what we have in Hydro and the quality, when you add that along with being able to hydrate a person's body, you can help improve their immune system. And we see now, just if we look at some of the cases going on, we see people with pre-existing conditions. We're seeing people, in the hospital. Unfortunately, we're seeing people dying, and we're seeing a lot of it has to do with your immune system and your health. And it almost sets up this place to where I am now, from public health and almost in general, to where I can begin to look at hydro, I can begin to look at health, nutrition, and food. And now we're looking at the opportunity in a different place, going, okay, well, how do we now begin to get this message out? How do we begin to create communities? How do we begin to get people higher quality water, and then higher quality, more nutrient dense produce to help improve their immune system and help improve their quality of life? And that just doesn't stop with the U.S. and Canada. I spent some time in Singapore. I was in Singapore and Korea in September, doing hydro and some ministry stuff. And a big issue in Singapore was the same thing as I'm in a wealthy country that can't feed itself. We were having conversations of what would it take to be able for a country to now begin to feed itself, instead of now importing everything from around, instead of importing the best things from around the world. Can we grow it now? Can we grow it? Can we provide quality, which now opens up opportunities? And does this provide now an opportunity to where we're looking at, whether it's Flint, Michigan, and Flint and some of the water issues, or just food deserts, whether you're in a low economic area, or I'm in an area like Miami, if you can't get food, you're going to be in trouble. So is this now an opportunity to really be a blessing to those who can afford the Whole Foods and the fresh markets, but then also those that don't have the quality food in their neighborhood? Is this now the opportunity where you can purchase and order online, where people are becoming more familiar with that, with your cell phones? And now can we get that to that end user and now help improve their quality of life without changing actually what they eat on an everyday basis?
Yeah, you and I have talked about that before, but just talk about what that process is going to look like for you moving forward, here in the U.S., for example.
In the U.S. initially, it's going to start with us doing some baseline testing. So baseline testing would be, let's just say we would have 50 people. We'd have 25 and 25. We would have everybody initially, that blood work that I was talking about years ago, we would have that blood work done. So now we would have a baseline of where a person's immune system, where they are in their immune system. Half the group now, we would begin to get them a higher quality of initially water, and then the fruits and vegetables that they eat on a daily basis. If we wanted to continue and go a step further, we would actually look at the meat that they consume, whether it's meat, pork, fish, and then we begin to supplement or change the producers where they're buying their food from. And now we're going to smaller family farms that are growing produce, and that work with animals, that their standards are a lot higher than what you'll buy from a normal grocery store. So that's initially what will take place for roughly 30 to 45 days. So then we can begin to look at two different baselines. Now we can look at a community of where we've now begun to change. We've kept them eating the same foods, but now we've changed the quality in the sense of what they're eating. So once we do that, then we'll be able to show statistically and through blood what their immune system actually looks like in 30 to 45 days when we've made the changes. So that's step one. After that's done, step two, now we begin to look at actually taking the quality of water that we have in hydro and taking a step back, and now we begin to grow, let's say, the kale and the salad and the cucumbers, the tomatoes and the strawberries. And then we almost do the same thing. We come back and now we have that baseline again, and we can now begin to test the quality of the produce that's in the supermarkets with the produce that we can grow. Because when it comes to growing and agriculture, it's your soil quality and water. And those two things are critical when it comes to actually producing more nutrient dense crops. And the more nutrient dense the crop, the more the person can actually get the benefit of what they're ingesting. To take it a step further, one of the reasons why you have so many people that are supplementing is because our soil is depleted, and our soil basically gets worse and worse every year. So if the land doesn't have a chance to kind of relax the way it's supposed to, then just your minerals and your nutrient content in that soil begins to go down. And if your soil doesn't have nutrients, you're growing vegetables and fruit that don't have the vitamins and minerals that it's supposed to have. So we're going to basically take a step back and say, one, how do we improve a person's health overall without changing what they do? And then how can we grow to where we can now begin to change the quality at a price point that, let's say, our lower income or our lower to middle income, middle of the road individuals can actually pay for? And then how do we take that and now get it to the end user?
You're taking a very scientific approach to this, which I think a lot of people can appreciate. But one of the challenges that you and I have discussed is the challenge of trying to change people's behavior. But in the midst of everything that's happening right now, a lot of us are being forced into a position where we're having to all implement some changes just for the sake of everyone's safety and health. And so how do you see that happening over the course of the next year?
I see two things happening. Initially, you're right. As far as changing a diet or changing the way someone eats, back when I was in the world of testing and working with physicians, and we had these conversations, the only times physicians saw like a real someone who really went out of their way to make the changes when those physicians did the testing, they were dealing with life or death issues. Whether someone was obese or someone had severe diabetes and they were gonna have to have a limb cut off, it was something extreme, or some kidney issues to where a person was like, you know what, I don't care what I need to do, I'm going to change my life. And this pandemic may bring about those changes, because coming out of this, I'm just coming out of just listening to conversations with people, looking at the news, the media. It almost kind of lends itself to saying, you know what, during this 6 or 7 weeks that we've been on quarantine, and now people are home cooking with access to the internet, and now are people going to start taking the health more seriously, or taking what they put in their body more seriously? I think you're going to have pockets of people or different ethnicities or races that are going to say, you know what, if this is what I have to do to help my family be healthier, or my generation be healthier, or my kids or my grandkids be healthier, I'm willing to do it, because I don't want the fear of us being sick, whether it's corona or whether it's diabetes, or whether it's kidney disease. It could be a number of different things, but this may be just what helps get people in that place to where they're looking at their health and what they're putting in their body, in a different way. Well,
it's certainly appreciated the steps that you're trying to take, and it's a very interesting time that we're in, and we'll see what happens, won't we?
Oh, we definitely will. We definitely, because we're coming out. Depending on what state you're in, like Florida, our beaches are open, except for South Florida. All the beaches are open. We'll hear today what's going to happen next, or kind of the rollout. But it's going to be very interesting to see in the different states and the different communities, what's going on, what people are doing, how are they improving their health. Summer's coming up, so does that mean we're going to see more people outside exercising? Or we're going to see people eating comfort food, because the pandemic, in a sense, is over. With everything that's gone on, I think we will see some good come out of it. When we look back at 10 years, 20 years, from now.
Well, Andre, I appreciate your time, and I'm excited to help other people learn about hydro and the work that you're doing. And we will talk to you again soon.
Okay, thank you so much, Ethan.
Bye-bye. There are over 2 million micro enterprises in America. When you shop with them, you support bringing jobs and opportunity to neighborhoods across the U.S. Join us next time for more discussion as we navigate this ever-changing grassroots economy. We'll see you again soon.